Well, here we are. It is Friday, February 17th, 2023, and this is the weekly video. We do these every Friday. Take a look at auctions that have taken place over the last week on eBay, live auctioneers, Sotheby's, all the major auction houses, Christie's, and just sort of bring everybody up to date on what's been going on and what's been happening in the market. A couple of things I want to go through before we get started, things that have been added to the website this week. If you go down to the book section over to the reference catalog here in the magic red box. We've added a couple of sales this week, 3 auctions actually. One of them is the J&J Lally sale, which we did a video on Wednesday and got that up, and wonderful things, great things. Check it out. The catalog is on there and it'll be there forever, which is a nice thing. And the other things that we added was we came across the sales for Auguttes that's coming up in a couple of weeks on the 6th and the 9th. Over in Paris. I strongly urge you to check out this sale. It's 2 sales. Well, they have an online series of auctions that aren't up yet, but they have 2 catalog sales with Asian art. One of them is this one, and the other one is this one. And there are some great pieces in here. There's a lot of stuff to do with the Vietnamese influence, the Vietnamese market, because of France's relationship to Vietnam all these years. So you often see a lot of blue to hue, some great Vietnamese painters and so forth. And we're going to talk about some of the lots because there's some major lots in here, including a couple of very important Vietnamese paintings that were done. They were actually done in Paris, but they were done by Vietnamese artists who went to the École des Beaux-Arts in Hanoi, which they actually started in 1925, and 2 of their most famous students. They're spectacular paintings. That's all I can say. And then they have the other sale, which is the more in the line with objects, porcelains, bronzes, silks, and all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of very nice lots in here, especially in the area of blue to hue, which is the export porcelain that was made predominantly in Jingdezhen for the Vietnamese market. People will often say, well, was this blue to hue? Was it made in Vietnam? What's the story with it? No, it's blue and white porcelain from the 18th and the 19th century typically that was ordered by the royal family initially in Vietnam, and then it became very popular in Vietnam, and they began producing for a broader market over time. But originally, it was stuff that was made for the imperial family, and then they went through there was a lot of turmoil there, as everybody knows, and they stopped ordering porcelain around the 1880s, and then came back and placed more orders around 1900. And they're really beautiful, and they're interesting because of how they're composed. And here are just a few. This isn't really a blue to hue piece. This caught my eye as one of the nicest peach form puzzle pots or catagons I've ever seen. This is probably made for the Vietnamese market. They're not calling it blue to hue in particular, but it is absolutely beautiful. And I really like this thing a lot. I think the form is great. The potting is outstanding. The way the handles are applied, the blue and white creeping over onto the piece and so forth. It's just beautiful. It's got some crackles in it. Doesn't bother me at all. This pot has been used, and it's beautifully done. And it apparently comes from the collection of a foreign a diplomat to Vietnam who owned it at one point. It measures 12 centimeters tall, so it's about 5 inches in height. Absolutely wonderful with a very low estimate. If you like these interesting pots, there are people who collect puzzle pots, this is a good one. This is a really good one. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it go maybe 3 or 4 times that estimate, even with the crackles in it, because it's so beautifully potted. Very tasteful, lovely. The only thing I wish they'd done is include more photos. Because they only have one primary photo for each lot. I'm sure you can contact them. Her name is Clementine at the organization at Auguttes, and she'll be happy to work with you, I'm sure. We actually got an email from her the other day. She was wondering if we were going to include the catalog, and I said, yeah, we already have it up, actually. So I told her we'd mention it in today's video. on Friday. She's a subscriber, by the way. The folks at Auguttes watch the videos each week, I found out, and was glad to hear it. All right, so you have this beautiful teapot, and then over here you have the blue de hue, the real what's known as blue de hue. These pieces made for the Vietnamese market, and what's striking about them is the layout in them is a little bit like the Japanese taste, but also like the Chinese taste, and some of the Chinese taste from the earlier in the 18th century, and some of it even has the feeling of transitional wares. And we're going to look at a couple of them that have that. I think you can see the influence of transitional wares on them. And then you have this. This is a 19th century dish, right? But it is. It looks very Kangxi in its execution. It's got a lot of elements of the way the creatures are drawn and so forth. And this is part of the influence of other things on the blue de hue porcelain. How they went back, they reached back and pulled up old designs and old patterns, and so it has a little bit of a look of Kangxi, but it's not really Kangxi. It's much later by 150 years, but beautifully done, really nice. There we go, and we'll see if we can get this thing to retract a little bit. There we go. This is a wonderfully decorated piece of porcelain. And it's very unusual, and people could look at this and say, well, it doesn't look Chinese. It looks Chinese, but it looks like something else. And it is. This is the kind of thing they made for the Vietnamese market. If you want to know any more about blue de hue, incidentally, if you're not familiar with it, there is two brothers, a fellow. They're in Paris. They run the Canablog site. His name is Alan Truong, and his brother, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But Alain is a connoisseur of art. He's Vietnamese. Came from Vietnam. I think his mother was Vietnamese and his father was French. I'm not sure, but long time relationship in Vietnam, and he runs a spectacularly good website. And if you go to it and Google blue de hue, you'll find he's written dozens of articles about blue de hue in the Vietnamese art world. It's really educational, informative. So I would suggest you do that. But that was a wonderful plate, and it was estimated at 2,000 to 3,000 euros, and I suspect it'll get there. This is a very nice example, and it measures what is it, about 7 inches in diameter? 7 inches in diameter, exactly 7 inches. These aren't huge pieces. They may look it, but they're not. And then you have this wonderfully decorated teapot with a metal handle. It measures about around about 9 inches in height, I guess, not including the handle, but very nice decoration. And again, you see that earlier influence of blue and white decoration that predates by 100 years when this pot was made. The way these flowers are done and so forth, the execution. If you pictured this on a giant sleeve vase, you'd think it was transitional period or Chongsen or something like that earlier. But this was done after that period, well after. But the decoration, the quality of the decoration is just outstanding. So again, check it out. And the estimate on this is pretty reasonable, 1,000 to 1,500 euros. I think it has a couple of condition issues or something like that. There's a handle, a lid, spout, let's see, maybe some wear or something. But you're going to get a condition report anyway. But this is another example I liked a lot. And then there's this. They're calling it Republic period. Probably is. It's a very large censer, though, with these wild handles. It's one of the ways you know it's probably not a Chin-Lung example. Those giant flanged handles coming off the sides of it. But this thing is big. It's 112 centimeters tall. So it is roughly 3.5, almost 4 feet in height. This is a big piece of cloisonné, estimated at 6,000 to 10,000 euros. And if you bring it in closely and really look at it, I think the dating on this is about right. The work on this looks awfully good, though. I must say, it has like a Chin-Lung mark or something on it, but it looks Republic to me, from what I can see. And I love these handles. I think they are spectacular. It just shows you how they can reinterpret a design and blow it up. There may be an antecedent to this too. There may be an old example out here with handles this big, but I can't think of it offhand. So, any rate, $6,000 to $10,000, but €6,000 to €10,000, but it's enormous. So you sort of get what you get a lot of bang for your buck on that. And then this is Sung Longquan Celadon bowl, estimated at €2,000 to €3,000. I can't see the bottom of it, but it does look Sung. It could be yuan also, obviously. As many of these pieces, there's not always a firm dividing line between Southern Sung and yuan period stuff. Sometimes they sort of blur together, and even the big auction houses, when they date them, they'll often say Southern Sung to yuan or something like that, and it's because the kilns often continued doing what they were doing with slight evolutions over many decades, and things didn't slam to a halt too often and suddenly shift gears the minute one era ended and a new dynasty began. So many times the potters kept doing what they'd always been doing, which seems natural. And this thing measures 4 inches tall, €2,000 to €3,000. Beautiful piece. I love the color of the Celadon, though. It's beautiful color. And then over here to the paintings. I wanted to talk about this. There are a couple of paintings in here that are particularly good. This is by Li Pho. He was a Vietnamese painter. He and this fellow, Mai Thu, or Mai Trung Thu, these were both Vietnamese gentlemen. They were in the first class of the École des Beaux-Arts that was established in Vietnam and Hanoi in 1925. They went to the school together, and they became fantastically successful in their lifetimes. They both more or less spent most of their lives, once they graduated, in Paris working, and they did these spectacular portraits, and very similar in feeling between them. The way the women's heads are depicted and so forth, but if you study them, they are quite different in many regards as well. This one was done around 1940. And do they say when this one was done? 1944, just a couple of years later. This painting is estimated at 350 to 550,000 euros. And he does bring this, these guys do bring this kind of money. Mai Thu has had many paintings sell at Sotheby's and Christie's. You can go and look. Some of them have brought 7 figures. So don't be surprised. But if you're interested in Vietnamese paintings, these and other works in this catalog, there are numerous examples in the catalog of work by these two artists and some other artists that are absolutely stupendous. And one of my favorite things in this sale is this Vietnamese screen that was done. I don't know what did they say when it was done. It looks like it was probably done in the 40s or something like that. But an absolutely great screen. I love, push this back a little. There we go. There it is. The colors, the way it's executed, this thing just knocks me out. I absolutely love this thing. And it's big. This is obviously a good size object, but it would make a room. It would make a room. You could see it you could easily see it in a European living room, displayed on a wall somewhere. The colors are great. The execution is unique. Absolutely like it. Estimated at 80 to 120,000 euros. We'll see how it does. But there's a lot of interest in this kind of work. The full screen measures 100 by 157 centimeters. So it's roughly a little under. It's about 3.5, 4 feet tall, and measures 5 feet long. It's good size. But a beautiful thing, truly beautiful. It looks like it's in very good condition. All right, so do check out these two sales. I think they're really worth it. I really, really do. This particular catalog, if you flip through it, there's some good Japanese things in here. There's some Japanese cases. There's some very good looking dingwares, and you're going to see a lot of dingwares sell, of course, at the J&J Lally sale. But if that's too rich for your blood, they've got a couple of really nice examples in here with modest estimates. Some very nice Japanese screens, Japanese boxes, Buddhas, Japanese wood block prints, some Thai figures, because you always have Thai figures over in Parisian sales. There's a very good early Korean 18th century rank badge here with the double cranes on it. There's a moon flask that they don't show the bottom of, so I can't talk too much about it. I can't really see, there's nothing you can really see from it. You'll have to get a hold of them to get more information on that. But there are numerous inkstones. Some of them look like they have some pretty good age to them, some good robes. So and then there's a whole section in here on Vietnamese art. I really go through it. And then you have the dingwares, celadons, sung pieces, display stands, famille rose, blue and white, all the usual suspects. And then you have a huge area of blue to hue wares, some very interesting examples. And there's a fair bit of blue to hue turning up on the market for some reason, which is good. I think it's because Vietnam is becoming increasingly a market that's buying up more and more of their culture. The way the Chinese have been buying back stuff, I think the Vietnamese are starting to buy it back too. So I think there's demand, and it's flushing a lot of these objects onto the market. And then when they're gone, they're gone. So the idea is, is that when these changes, shifts occur, when suddenly there's a lot of blue to hue, or there's a lot of a certain type of object on the market, it's happening for a reason, and the smart money participates in that. And if you have an interest in it, start collecting it now, because once things become more and more popular, obviously the prices and difficulty in acquiring it increase over time. There's some very good Chinese porcelain in it as well. Most of it is 18th and 19th century. It's a good little sale, good sale. So check that out. All right, now over on the Bidamount.com newsletter page for last week, there were some good results, and there was a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, there seems to be an increase back on there with more and more decent Chinese material. Got my fingers crossed it continues. All right, and if you come over to the newsletter page, here it is. This is where we put things up that we handpick each week that that look good to us, that we think are authentic. And you can subscribe to it, of course. Many of you know that. Many of you have subscribed. It's free. It's completely free. Just give us your email address and so forth, and you'll get notified the minute we update the page every Friday. And that's also when we post this weekly video. They all go up at about the same time. But last week, there was a lot of good material on here, a lot of interesting material. And as you can see, there's much more than there had been in the past few months. And let's hope this continues. But I want to go through some of the results, because I think things are looking pretty good. One of them was this. This was a nice pair of cloisonné vases, Meiji period examples, a nice pair, beautiful colors, beautiful color. Estimated at $202. They had some minor imperfections. They were around 6 or 8 inches in height, something like that. But beautiful colors. These are absolutely elegant. And they were apparently unsigned, and they sold for $202, which again displays the big discrepancy between Chinese and Japanese art. If you had a piece of Chinese cloisonné of this quality that you were selling, you could probably add a 0 or 2 to that result. Just to show what the difference is. So it's a good market to be collecting in. And this was something from the ceramics and collectible guys, Shangri-La over in the Netherlands. They always have a number of auction items each week, and they had this. This was a blue to hue dish, a sort of a standard type that you see. They often put metal rims on them. They really began putting a lot of metal rims on them toward the middle end of the Qing dynasty, I guess, from what I've read. And this one was a nice one. It went for $293. Very viable. Very, very viable. And then over to this. This was sort of like a little bargain of the week, or the kind of thing that you can buy if you don't have an unlimited wallet. Not everybody has millions of dollars to spend on Chinese art, obviously. And this was a nice example, a mid-19th century celadon ground famille rose baluster vase. It was around 15 inches in height. And normally these vases bring somewhere in the $500 to $700 range in this size. This one had a problem though. It had a hairline in the neck here. It looks like it had a very recent break. I'm afraid. I'm wondering if the seller broke it, because he has all the pieces. And here is where it goes in here, and you can get the pieces and fix it yourself. So in exchange for the buyer willing to accept a not so perfect piece, but maybe didn't want to spend $700 or $750 or whatever that it's going for, somebody picked this up for $110 with the little pieces. And you can pretty easily put those back on yourself or ask a restorer to do it. A restorer could put those pieces on and make them look pretty good for a couple of $100 probably. And somebody picked this up for $110. So a little bargain of the week. I think I have no problem with buying a piece like this and putting it back on. You can glue it yourself with a little crazy glue gel if you have your really steady fingers. And you want to do it that way. It is reversible. They have material now. If you somebody said, can you super glue things? And you absolutely can, because every restorer these days that I know of, they have a thing. I think it's called polycracker or something. It's a solvent that they use to break down super glue adhesives when they want to do restorations. So if you want to use that to do a repair and you're not sure if you're ever going to have it professionally done. Go ahead and don't worry about it. All right. You can always use hide glue or something else too to adhere things, but you can use that. And then over to this export plate with the European scene on it. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago because there was one, an identical one was in the Cohen and Cohen sale that was perfect. This one had a couple of hairlines in it or something that sold for over $3,000, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. And this one wasn't quite so perfect, and as predicted, it didn't bring quite as much. But that's the difference between a perfect piece and a non-perfect piece. And the perfect piece brought $3,500. The one with the hairline, $765. There you go. And the only difference is a couple of hairlines. That's it, and maybe a couple of flea bites in it. It basically that kind of damage, or it's considered damage by many collectors, takes off about 70%, sometimes 80% of the value. Just a couple of hairlines. But it opens the door to people that maybe aren't in a position to spend $3,500. You have to keep that in mind too. So you can build a collection of types that is not going to break the bank. And the same thing was true with this plate. This had the sort of Famille Rose floral sprays around the rim, very nicely done. Had a little symbol here, a heraldic symbol at the top. Nicely done flowers. The back of it looks fine. But it wasn't perfect, and it ended up selling for $355. But a nice example. And these were from US 213 Haru, who's out in Ohio. He sells periodically. Not a huge seller on eBay, but when he gets things, he puts things up. He has nice things, so we do watch for his items. Now, this vase was up last week, and I hope one of you bought it. This is a very interesting piece of porcelain. It's a bit unusual, and unfortunately, he didn't take very good pictures of it. They're a little dark, I'm afraid. He made the mistake of shooting toward the sunlight, this bright background. So this looks very dark, and the camera automatically adjusted the light background over there. So it didn't bring up all the color. But this Celadon glazed with gilding, with these little roundels, these little silk balls all over it. With that mark on the bottom, that is the Hall of Rising Sun, the Hall of Sun, Hall of Sunshine, Hall of Light mark, which was used. If you check Davison or any of the indexes, they talk about this mark, and it was used from the Kangxi period to the end of the Daoguan period. And I did some looking, and I couldn't find any instances of it being used after the Daoguan period. So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But this was a very nice vase. It was about 15 inches in height. For some reason, this guy is one of the sellers that doesn't like to put his put the measurements in his description. So you have to go fishing through all of his descriptions, and you get to the very, very last picture. There's the dimension, 14 inches in height. There's the foot rim, this nice white paste on the side. Looks very good. Looked like the vase was in very good condition. And it's certainly, if it's not Daoguan, it's darn close to it. This is not a Republic vase. And, April woke up. Hi, April. April, it's Mom. Come on. Anyway, she you wake her up from her nap sometimes, and she gets a little excited. Go on and get out there. Go ahead, April. Go ahead, baby. All right, I'll see you later. All right. And so anyway, I think this was an absolutely great buy with these. It's called an arrow vase, incidentally, with the handles on the side, and the design comes. If you're wondering about these, these go back to bronzes that were originally made. There was a sale of actually bronze arrow vases from the Sung to the Ming Dynasty a while ago for the arrow game, and they would sit and you were supposedly throwing these little arrows and try to get them to land in the tubes. And that style that was done originally in early bronzes and in Sung pieces and so on came back during the Qing Dynasty, and they were done in porcelain increasingly, and that's what the form is. But this was a very nice vase, and I think it was a steal, relatively speaking. I think it probably should have brought closer to $5,000 or $6,000. I think this was a very nice piece of porcelain. But the mark is obscure, the lighting wasn't great, and somebody got a bargain. All right, and I hope it was one of you. I always like to hear about our users who get bargains, because I think that's a very nice vase. Like I said, it could be worth as much as $5,000 with that mark on it. It's a good piece of porcelain. Now, on to this, the 18th century Kangxi dish. This was a nice plate. It was, quote, almost perfect, faint star crack in it. But a nice example, very classic, not an extremely rare one, but a nice one. And if you collect Kangxi pieces, and you don't want to spend $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a piece, perfectly good plate someone picked up for $102. So it can certainly be done. There you go. And I suspect, I've heard from a number of people, I always joke about saying just go in and carpet bomb the thing with bids. Just leave bids, leave starting bids everywhere. And I've heard from a lot of people in the last couple of months that have been quite successful in that strategy. They may leave 30 or 40 or 50 bids. And some of them, one guy said, is embarrassingly low. And he got the piece. And he was so pleased. So don't be afraid to do that. You want to be able to cover it if you get lucky and you pick up a bunch of items that way. But as long as you can cover the bids and take care of it, you can build up some awfully nice things into a collection without spending a fortune. There are a couple of ways to build great collections. If you have a lot of money, you hire advisors and they do it for you. If you don't have a huge amount of money to spend, education and calculation. And you go in, you learn as much as you possibly can about the objects, study prices, go look at past auction prices and so forth, and get a gauge of that area of the market, and then go in and leave a bid on it. All right, and from where I sit, you'll build a better collection with a little bit of money and a lot of knowledge than the other way around. You'll build a much more interesting collection. Just a little side note. All right, now the Chinese silk hand-embroidered tapestry wall handling panel. This was 55 by 24 inches. I liked it a lot. I thought this was very, very nice. I talked about it last week. I thought the very crisply drawn. The colors were still good. Had a couple of little water stains in the corners, but they were out of the way. They weren't in the middle of anything. And this was cut from a bigger bolt. I don't know how big this thing was. And it went for $685. And if you didn't get this one, there's another one very similar on silver metallic thread that will be on the newsletter page this week. This sold up at Joni's, this Long Quan Celadon tripod incense burner. It is Ming. I had a couple of people ask about some of the Sung stuff, and some of it looked a little off to me, so I didn't bother putting them in the newsletter. But I did like this. Thought this was a pretty good piece of Celadon. Had very nice color. The color green on this was really good, really, really good. And I think it went under the money. I think this was a relative bargain. It had an old repair on the rim. Maybe they took into account that a bit too much, because that could be fixed. That's an easy thing to fix and get the color right. But the potting on this thing was really good. Beautifully potted, perfectly potted. Very spherical, no unevenness to it. And it went for only $1,311. And as those of you that follow these things know that in other auctions over the last couple of years, we've seen this form, which they made quite a few of in the early 16th century and the late 15th century before the kilns were shut down in around 1550. These often bring ones of this quality. Of the lesser quality ones, this is what they bring. But of good quality, of this kind of quality, they seem to sell more typically in the $2,200 to $3,500 range. So I think this was a relative bargain for the week. All right, and then over to this. This was, I believe, this was Arthur Potts had this nice rose water sprinkler bottle. There's the bottom of it, Kangxi period, probably made for the Middle Eastern or the Indian market or the Southeast Asian market. Beautifully decorated. That penciled sort of style they did with very finely worked drawing on the porcelain down here. This was a technique they used on these. They used them on all the porcelains, actually. This was a nice one. Had a little nick out of the foot. That was about it. Nothing to complain about. And somebody picked this up, I think, pretty reasonably. $569. I don't think that was a bad price at all for a good rosewater bottle. They certainly, we've seen them selling this area before, and we've seen them sell for a lot more, up to $1,000 to $1,500 even. And it really depends on where they're being sold, what the market is that you're selling into. All right, and then over here for this is really nice blue and white porcelain platter. This is from a seller, British Country House. It's fairly new. He's only got about 44 feedbacks. But this was a very nice piece of 18th century blue and white exportware, painted like a canvas. Nicely done. Good use of negative space. I like the overhead, the red-headed crane flying by, curling his neck under to look down. That's a technique. It's a style of drawing that was actually done first in the Kangxi period. You'll see it, or transitional period actually, with the birds going by with their heads turned down. And here they've used that same style of drawing, but using it with a red-headed crane rather than a more traditional like a migratory bird of some kind. Very, very nicely done. And somebody picked this up for $330. That's a beautiful piece of porcelain for just $330, I have to say. Really is. And another piece of 18th century export was this. This was also with Arthur Potts. Very nice guglet, beautifully done. This is the sort of on the higher end of how these were executed. Sometimes they used a little gilding around the frame that circles the cartouche here, but nicely decorated, made probably around 1790, and it sold for $1,238, which is a good price, but it deserved it. That was a good piece of porcelain, beautifully decorated. All right. And what's coming up this week on the newsletter page, we're going to reload this thing by the time you see this video, it'll all be up. Because we'll have all of this replaced. We have a way to quickly replace them at the end of the day. And these are some of the things coming up. This is my friend down in Marblehead, not far from here, has Room Tonic, and he's been selling Chinese export wares. He has some pretty good access to pieces down there in that town. He's near Salem, so you want to keep an eye on him. And he puts together, I think these are about the most comprehensive listings I've ever seen on eBay, and I've seen some pretty comprehensive listings. But if you don't know him, he's taken advantage of one. These are very nice platters. These are very nice 1780s export reticulated undertrays. It's a pair of them, which is really nice. You don't see pairs of these very often. And if you go down the page, loads of information about the object. And video, the eBay, many of you don't take advantage of it, but eBay allows you to do videos now. And he set up a rotating table, and he's got a video of both of them going around in circles. Then he's got a series of blacklight photos and on the rotators going around. And this is the way to do listings. I'm just going to say it. And I'm not saying it because I like this guy, but this is how you do a listing. This is how you get every inch you can out of the Cassini algorithm that eBay has in place. He has put everything in here you can. He's got upcoming lots. He's got extensive payment policies, and everything you might possibly want to know. So when people say from now on, how should I do my listings? I'm going to send them a link to this guy's listings because he's really taken it to heart. And this is a lovely pair of export. These just went up last night. They will be on the newsletter page all week. They should bring $700 or $800 each, I would think. But we'll see. They're very, very nice, and they look like they're in good condition. Excellent condition, no hairlines, chips, or repairs. There you go. All right, now, on to this. I threw this in there, and it's been in the listing, and somebody said, why do I have this in here? One of you folks recommended it in the comments weeks ago, and I can't remember who it was. It was probably a month and a half ago, and I'd seen this book before by Adam Brooks. He's an author. He now lives in Washington. He's originally was with the BBC. He's a very good writer, And he wrote this book called Fragile Cargo, China's Wartime Race to Save the Treasures from the Forbidden City. And I got the book. And where is it? Right? There it is. That's the book. All right. This is a terrific book. If you like a good story, the first chapter of the book actually goes through sort of the day in the life of the Emperor Qianlong and talks about how he gets up in the morning, what he does, how he likes having his sweet cakes, going for a walk around the gardens, what he does at 10 o'clock, what he does at noon. It's really interesting. And then the book gets into the political traumas of the day, the rape of Nanking, the Japanese coming down out of Manchuria, and then how the museum creators in Beijing reacted when the imperial collection became under threat. And this is a very famous story. There were many moving parts. From all these different, from the warlords and all this other stuff, and how did they save millions of objects from being destroyed? And this is a very good book. I'm sort of picking my way through it, enjoying it. I highly urge you, if you like a good read, this is a very good read. It really is. It's a good read. And what was the other book? Somebody else asked me about this before we get into too much more here. We did 2 videos on the Yuan Ming Yuan, and somebody wanted to ask me just the other day. They said, where did you get some of the material? And the single best book was also recommended by one of you folks who sent me a copy of this, and it was a viewer over in the UK. Thank you. I did read it, and I used a lot of this. I had a bunch of other files that I had gathered, probably about 30 other documents that I'd found regarding the Summer Palace and the destruction and robbery of the place. But a lot of the stuff for the book, a lot of the dates, facts, figures, and who said what to whom came out of this. And it's called China's Summer Palace, Finding the Missing Imperial Treasures, written by O.M. Lewis. And very good book. As you can see, we tabbed a few pages in it. A lot of research. But at any rate, this is also a great book. So I like to recommend people buy books. You can't learn everything from pictures on the internet. You've got to buy books and read about them and learn about the history. Very, very interesting. And then now on to what else is going to be in the newsletter this week is this Rockefeller pattern platter. This is a nice one. It's got a beautifully maintained gilded rim. Often that gold around the rim is worn off by the time you get to today, just because they were used so much, they were cleaned inappropriately and so forth. This one measures 17 3/8 inches in diameter, so it's a pretty big plate. It's got 29 bids so far. It's got closes on Sunday. It's up to $1,300. Should get up in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, I suspect. Could even go maybe a little more. But rare bird and beautifully done. Beautiful decoration. That's the one thing about these Rockefeller plates. Beautiful patterning, beautiful painting. And then this, if you like Bunkrong wares, this is Nordic Antiques, has this up. A really nice example. They're over in Sweden. This is about a 9.5 or 10 inch in diameter tatsa of Bunkrong ware. But in beautiful condition, it seems. There's one of the flower tips has a minor nick out of it, and that's it. It's getting a lot of interest. It's up to $579. It's got 2 days to close. This also closes on Sunday. It'll be on the newsletter page this week. Expect it to bring $1,000 to $1,500 because Bunkrong Wares has a very tight community of collectors, and prices seem to be pretty stable there. So expect that. And then over to this. This was my favorite thing of the week. And some of you are wondering, what the heck is it? This is a seller named Trust Gives over in the UK. He's a fairly new seller. He's got 86 feedbacks, and according to this, he's been collecting for many, many years. I looked at some of his things, and it looks like he's not making up a story to sell things. And he decided to sell some things, and he's got this in here. And those of you that are interested in what they call later bronzes made between the Sung Dynasty and up into the very, very early Qing Dynasty, Kangxi period, may recognize this. But as a bronze, picture it with these ribs, the way this is shaped, this bottom part in particular, is very similar to Kangxi bronzes. That were made during that period. The top is a little different. It doesn't have these flower petals around the top, but it's very, very similar in the body. This is a great looking vase. It has a repair to it, by the way. It has an old repair on the shoulder, and the seller says he didn't even know what it's for. Did it get bumped or bruised or something, and somebody filled it in badly? Was it done at the kiln? And this is a terrific little vase. If you like aesthetic objects and you don't want to blow a bundle on it, it looks to be a piece of Sichuanware made in the Guangdong province. It's got a pottery body base to it. Hold on a second. There's the bottom of it. Very typical of some of these Sichuan pieces. Nicely done. I just love this thing. I love the shape of it. I like the feeling of it. It's not going to sell for a fortune, I don't think. I suspect it's going to sell for probably around between $400 and $600, but I just love this thing. I thought it was great. It measures, it's not huge, it's not big. It's a little over 6 inches tall. It looks bigger. The Kangxi bronze examples could be quite large, 14, 15 inches, because I've owned them in the past. But this is a smaller version done in pottery. He says it's based on a metal form shape, and he's quite correct. It's a form most closely connected to the Kangxi period. But I think as those of you that like academic, and you know who you are, and I know who you are because you email me all the time, that have a sort of you're interested in things regardless of condition. You don't mind buying a fragment once in a while, that kind of thing. This is a pretty cool object. And he's also selling this. This looks to be a late Qing repoussé worked Chinese hand warmer. It's either late Qing, possibly early Republic, but awfully nice. It's up to $51. Should bring $300 to $400. I like this a lot. I think this is very, very nicely done. Looks to be of good quality. And his listings appear to be quite accurate. He's also selling this. There's a bunch of things he's got. I'm going to put a lot of them in there. This is a later Ming sort of Swato Zhengshao signed bowl. The lead picture here got awful dark, but if you go through the pictures, some of them have better lighting. The primary shot was awfully dark, but there it is. And this should bring $500 to $700, and I don't know if it's going to get there because you've only got 2 days to go, unless it's on a lot of watch lists. Only he knows that. And then those of you that like the last couple of weeks ago, we had a piece of export ware for the Islamic market, and I said they don't turn up very often. Well, another one turned up. Opened my big mouth, and there we are. And this one is interesting. This is a piece of export ware that was made. It's dated 1833 during the Daoguan period for the Middle Eastern market. And this is quite an elegant piece. And many of you that collect export wares will instantly recognize this border decoration and this pattern, even without the Arabic on it. Here's the back of it, pretty typical. The dating looks absolutely correct. That's been inscribed on it. And this type of overglazed blue enamel ware with gilding and so forth, they made very similar examples for the export market in America with people interested in the Federal period. And here you have stars against blue, and you'll see that pattern used in many other types of export wares. This one, it's in Arabic. And it's also in beautiful condition. It's up to $152. It closes on Sunday. How big is it? Is it about 9 inches in diameter or something? It's small, 6 inches across. Still going to do well. Still going to bring $400 or $500 because it's got Arabic on it. And people love that stuff. I like it too. And then this really caught my eye. This is another seller I happen to know up in New Hampshire, Steve, Coast to Coast Antiques. He's been around for years. I've talked about him before. He's a real character. Nice guy, though. Good guy. He's one of the good guys. He's actually a friend of Josh Chamberlain's, who's Juice 1499, another seller in New Hampshire. You got to realize New Hampshire only has a few 100,000 people in it, so everybody seems to know each other. Is this beautiful piece of Chinese jade that's been set in this gold gold mount. Absolutely wonderful with this box. They always put the scales in there. And it has the name of the jewelry store that handled it with its original box. This is a great thing. If your wife or somebody you love or your girlfriend's got a birthday or anniversary or something coming up, buy this thing. This is very nice. This is very, very nice. This is elegant. And it measures 1¼ inches by 3/4 of an inch. It's not huge. It's a nice, delicate little pin, about that big, but just beautiful. He's dating it to late 19th to early 20th century. It's up to $130. Don't be afraid to spend $600 or $700 on this thing. That's a very nice piece of jewelry. And it comes with this fantastic case. The case, I think, is worth probably $200 or $300, but don't be afraid to spend $600 or $700, $800 on this. This is a nice thing. I love the color of the jade, and the gilding, the gold work looks excellent. So check that out. And then over here to this, there's a couple of interesting pieces. This is a Auguttes, and I don't know who this seller is. This is another new seller. Over in the UK, has some. They have some Chinese things up. And they've got a bunch of Japanese things up, and one of them is this really charming little Meiji period Seto pottery dish. There's the back of it. Very nice. I love the way this thing is decorated. This is very appealing. Little food dish. It is not huge. It measures 6 inches square, just 6 inches by 6 inches. It's not a big platter or anything, but wonderfully painted, very aesthetically pleasing to look at. I think he's right on the dating, Meiji period. Give or take 10 years, but absolutely great. And he's got another one in here that has a face on it. So there's a bunch of things from him that'll be in the newsletter this week, so do check that out. And then this 19th century flambe glazed vase. I've had 3 inquiries about this thing on the identification assistance side. People seem to like this a lot. This is a 19th century example. Has very nice glaze. The brown dressed on the glaze on the bottom, but very nice white, very smooth foot rim on this. There's a good picture of the bottom. A few imperfections under there, which is to be expected. It's normal. The glaze is good on it. It's got these funny little black specks on it. People were asking about it. Those are just air bubbles. Nothing. There's the color of it. This is really, really nice. And these pieces have been in huge demand lately, so expect this thing is going to jump quite a bit at the end. Monochromes have been very, very popular, and there is a who's got the monochrome sale coming up? The Cadell collection. Is it Sotheby's or Christie's? We're going to talk about it, but there's a very good imperial monochrome collection coming up. This thing measures only 6 inches tall, but expect it to do well. Expect it to almost add as 0 onto the current bid. It's going to jump up at the end, I suspect. This is a nice piece of flambe. And then over here, this is that piece of silk I was telling you about. There was that one that was in the sale last week, and about $694 or something. Here's one very similar style. It's got a couple of stains on it. You may need to send it out to a good textile conservator. Don't be afraid to do that. But a nice, silver ground silk on here. Beautifully decorated. It's up to $300. It closes tomorrow, Saturday. Expect it's going to get up probably to $500 to $700 by the time it's done. But nice looking thing. Nice looking things. And this is being sold by Smart Fine Art. That's a clever name. Over in Colorado, in the United States, out west. And then this is another piece that's my friend has from Room Tonic, another Mandarin platter. And I put this in here because a couple of weeks ago there were a few Mandarin platters and they did awfully well. And if you missed out on those, there's another one that'll be in the newsletter this week. And there are a slew of other things. I think that we have on my watch list. We save everything on my eBay watch list, and I think it's several pages long at this point. It's pretty long. So check out the newsletter page this week. And as I said, if you don't subscribe and you want to get notified when something comes in, just fill this out. Just fill out that form. It's just an email address and your first name is sufficient. You don't have to give me all your details. And on the email list we have a very large email list, as some of you might imagine, from over the years. And I get asked all the time, people want to borrow, auctioneers want to borrow our email list. We do not rent our email list. We do not loan our email list. We do not share it with anybody. And that was a promise I made 7 years ago when we started this site, when we began asking people if they wanted to sign up for the newsletter. And I said, yeah, and we made a decision at that time that whatever's on the list is your information, and I have no right to sell your information to anybody, or lend it for that matter. So we don't. That's all there is to it. And if you run an auction house and you're going to send me one of those emails asking if you can have a copy of it, the answer is no. And that's it. All right. That's it for the week. Have a great weekend. It is astonishingly, it's been in the mid and upper 50s here in Gloucester, in New England, in the middle of February for the last couple of weeks, the last couple of days, last 3 days, I guess. Yesterday it was 61 here at the high. I checked. And again, it's warm here today, and I hope it's warm where you are. But I think winter will be coming back, so that's fine too. Have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, and see you all next time. Bye-bye.